Welcome to another exciting werewolf shifter romance audiobook. The Wolf's Love Triangle, Rejected by My Mate, Desired by His Rival. A Catherine Stewart romance collection.
Chapter 1. Sia sat at a cafe, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee. Maybe today, she thought to herself with a sheepish smile, as a glimmer of hope flickered in her chest. But that was ruined when her phone buzzed, another message. Jason. Hey, how's your day going? She glanced at the screen, then away. What's the point? She thought. Another attempt at connection. Another message that felt hollow. She scrolled through the app again, profiles, smiles, promises. None of them stood out. None of them felt real. Her thumb hovered over the reply button, uncertainty creeping in. Should I respond? She typed a quick reply, good, just tired, then set the phone down. She stared out the window, watching couples pass by, feeling the weight of her isolation. Why was it so hard for her? She noticed so many couples today. Maybe the cruel love goddess was messing with her again. Her thoughts were interrupted by another buzz. Jason again. I know this might sound forward, but I really think we could get along. What do you say? Want to chat later? Just then, the waiter approached, his presence pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. Need anything? He asked, his voice gentle. In her mind, she could almost hear herself say, yes, love. I need love. Good love. The thought slipped from her lips before she could stop it. Yes, love. I need love. Good love, she said aloud, the words coming out louder than she intended. She immediately felt her face flush, convinced that the waiter had heard her unspoken wish. The waiter paused, giving her a polite but slightly confused nod. She quickly shook her head, mortified, as if to dismiss the words she couldn't take back. He didn't respond, simply walking away with a quiet glance. Sia sank into her seat, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She stared at her phone again, trying to shake off the moment. The message from Jason still sat on the screen unanswered. She stared at the message, unsure. It felt different, but was it really? Or was it just another distraction? She could already hear the voices in her head. You're too picky. You want too much. Love's not real for you. Her heart sank. Maybe I'm not meant for this. She picked up the phone, but instead of replying, she locked it and pushed it aside, feeling the weight of disappointment settle deep inside her. Another attempt, another letdown. The message from Jason sat on the screen unanswered. If only she could find someone who saw her, really saw her, the way she wanted to be seen. But maybe that was asking too much. She'd always wanted that kind of love, real, pure, the kind that made everything worth it. But it seemed as elusive as ever. Hey! An unfamiliar voice came from behind. Sia turned around quickly, almost knocking over her coffee. She blinked, her heart skipping a beat as her gaze locked with his. The man who stood before her had an easy smile, his eyes a little mischievous but warm. His hair was slightly tousled, like he'd been running his hands through it all morning. He stood tall, his posture relaxed yet confident. Hey, you too, Sia replied, forcing a small smile, trying to steady her nerves. He chuckled lightly, his tone easy. I didn't mean to startle you. I've been meaning to introduce myself for a while now. He extended a hand. Leo. Sia hesitated for a moment, her mind racing. He seemed different. There was something in his smile that made her both curious and cautious. She hesitated, then took his hand. It felt warm and firm, but his grip wasn't too tight, giving her space to breathe. Sia, she said, her voice a little quieter than she intended. She immediately regretted the lack of confidence in her tone, but she didn't want to overthink it. Leo gave her a reassuring smile. Nice to meet you, Sia. He gestured to the empty seat across from her. Mind if I join you? Sia blinked, startled for a moment before nodding, the polite response slipping out before she could second-guess herself. Sure. Leo slid into the chair across from her, his eyes still glinting with amusement. He leaned back casually, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. I have to say, I didn't expect to hear someone so candidly calling out for love in the middle of a cafe. Sia froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. Oh my God, you heard that? Leo chuckled softly. The whole town heard it, I think. He paused, his grin widening as he raised an eyebrow. I mean, it was kind of hard to miss. Sia's face flushed crimson, and she instinctively ducked her head, her hands nervously adjusting her cup. I didn't mean to say it out loud, she muttered, feeling the embarrassment wash over her in waves. I was just thinking, you know. Not that I really expected anyone to hear it. Leo leaned forward slightly, an almost teasing glint in his eyes. Well, maybe it was fate. Maybe the universe was giving you a little nudge. Sia shot him a look, her defensive walls starting to rise. Fate? Really? You think the universe is just listening in on random people's thoughts and deciding when to make an entrance? Leo shrugged, unbothered. Who knows? It's as good an explanation as any. His smile softened and he added, maybe it's just that, well, you're not the only one who could use a little love, right? Sia blinked, caught off guard by his vulnerability. But she quickly covered it with a snort, trying to deflect. Yeah, right. You're probably just making fun of me. Typical. Leo's expression faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered, leaning back again. Making fun? No, I'm not. You just sound like someone who's been waiting a long time for something real. It's not funny. It's honest. Sia looked away, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her cup. She couldn't tell if he was being genuine or just playing her. Maybe, she said quietly. But it's hard to believe in it when everything feels so fake. Leo tilted his head, studying her. Fake? What makes you think that? Sia's voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know. It's just hard to trust anyone, you know? People say all the right things, but it's never really enough. Leo leaned in, his gaze intense. Maybe that's because you've been waiting for someone who says what you want to hear instead of someone who shows you what they mean. His words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Sia's pulse quickened, and she shifted in her seat, suddenly unsure of herself. What do you mean by that? He leaned back, his hands resting on the table, his tone easy again. I just mean that words are easy. It's the actions that speak louder. But, hey, if you want to keep playing it safe, that's your choice. Sia opened her mouth, ready to argue, but stopped. She wasn't sure why, but something in his eyes made her hesitate. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had been holding on to the wrong things. Too scared to trust enough to see where it could lead. Playing it safe, she repeated quietly. Leo raised an eyebrow. Yeah, you know, keeping your guard up, not letting anyone get too close. It's easier that way, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. Sia felt a twinge of panic in her chest. But what if I get hurt? Her voice came out a little sharper than she intended. What if I let someone in and they disappoint me? Leo leaned back slightly, a playful smirk forming on his lips. Oh, you're not the first person to think that. But hey, if you're not willing to take the chance, you're just gonna keep sitting here, right? His tone was light, teasing, yet somehow it made her pause. Sia took a deep breath, her heart still racing. She had always been cautious, guarded, afraid of what might happen if she let someone in. But something about Leo's presence, it was different. He wasn't like the others. There was a certain confidence about him, something she couldn't ignore. You really think I should just take the risk? Sia asked, raising an eyebrow, still unsure, but feeling the curiosity spark inside her. Leo leaned in a little, his eyes narrowing just slightly, almost like he was challenging her. If you keep holding back, you'll miss out on something that could be worth it. You don't know what could happen unless you try, right? Sia's heart skipped a beat, and for the first time in the conversation, she felt herself soften just a little. Maybe there was something to his confidence. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't full of empty promises like the others. He seemed genuine in his own way. Her mind raced, the conflict still there, but for the first time in a while, her instincts urged her to take a chance. Was she really ready to take that step? Leo broke her train of thought with a wink, as if sensing her hesitation. You know, he said, leaning back in his chair, I don't normally have to convince anyone this much. Sia couldn't help but laugh at the cockiness in his voice. There it was, the bad boy charm she had always heard about. His confidence, the ease with which he spoke, made her feel both intrigued and a little unsure. But there was something magnetic about it. You're not so bad yourself, she replied with a teasing grin, finding a small spark of confidence in herself. Leo's smirk widened, and he leaned forward again, his eyes catching hers. I don't do good very well, he said quietly, his voice lowering just enough to send a shiver down her spine. But if you're willing to take the risk, I'll make sure it's worth it. Sia felt a flush rise to her cheeks, and she quickly looked away, trying to mask her reaction. But Leo was watching her closely, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. With a casual motion, he pulled a pen from his pocket and scribbled something on a napkin. He slid it across the table to her. "Here's my number," Leo said, his voice calm and confident. "Call me." Chapter 2. Sia stared at the napkin in her hand, Leo's number written in neat ink. Her fingers trembled as she held the phone, the weight of the decision heavy in her palm. Without thinking, she tapped the number into her phone and pressed the call button. The phone barely rang for a few seconds before she ended the call, the nerves creeping up her spine. She sighed, frustrated with herself, but before she could put the phone down, it rang again. Leo's name flashed on the screen. She barely let it ring once before answering, her heart thumping against her chest. "Hello." Leo's voice slid into the call, smooth and casual. Sia froze for a moment, but quickly regained her composure, trying to sound calm. "Hey, it's Sia," she said, her voice a little softer than she intended. Well, Leo's voice was teasing, almost like he was enjoying the fact that she called so quickly. "That was fast. I didn't expect you to dial so soon." "I'm impressed." Sia felt a heat rise in her cheeks. Yeah, so I called," she replied quickly, not knowing what else to say. Leo chuckled, his amusement clear. "I knew it. My charm is irresistible." Sia rolled her eyes, despite the fluttering in her chest. "Please. You can't even charm a puppy." Leo let out a low laugh, clearly enjoying the back and forth. "Oh, so I'm a puppy now, huh? Well, you must have a soft spot for puppies." "I don't," Sia said, though the hint of a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "But if you ever manage to charm one, let me know. I'll be impressed." Leo's playful tone never wavered. "I'll be sure to add 'charmed a puppy' to my resume. You'll be the first to know." Sia laughed, shaking her head at the banter. Just as she started to think of something else to say, Leo cut in, his voice suddenly shifting. "I can't wait to see you again," he said, his tone sincere but still carrying a hint of his usual confidence. "Dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m. Sia's heart skipped a beat at how quickly he turned the conversation toward meeting again. She paused, the excitement and nervousness mixing in her chest. "Yeah, sounds good," she said, trying to sound casual but feeling the tension in her shoulders. Leo's voice softened. "Great. I'll pick you up then. Don't keep me waiting too long." "Promise," Sia replied quickly, then added, "and if I do, I'll make you wait for a while." Leo's laugh was low and warm. "I like a little challenge," he said, his tone playful but something more lingering beneath it. "I'll take my chances." With that, the call ended. Sia sat back, the phone still in her hand, the weight of it all settling in. She hadn't expected to feel so nervous. Tomorrow. Dinner. With Leo. With Leo, she had to make a good impression. His boyish charm, his funny banter, the way he made her feel, like she was the only one in the room even when he wasn't looking directly at her. It all kept swirling around in her mind. He wasn't like anyone she'd met before. There was something magnetic about him, something that both thrilled and terrified her. Scattered clothes on the bed. The air was thick with anticipation. Sia paced back and forth, her mind racing as she tried to focus on the task at hand, picking the right outfit for dinner. She felt a knot of nervous excitement in her stomach, and despite the warmth of the room, she couldn't shake the chill of uncertainty that clung to her. She wanted this night to go well. She wanted to make a good impression on Leo, but more than that, she wanted to prove to herself that she could do this, that she could step out of her comfort zone and take a chance. Her hands trembled as she picked up yet another dress and held it up in front of her. "Come on, Sia," her friend Emma said from the bed, lounging with a soft laugh as she watched Sia pull out dress after dress. "You look great in all of them. Seriously, pick one." Sia shook her head, tossing the dress aside. "No, I don't." She grabbed another one, holding it up against her body, then looked at herself in the mirror. "I just don't feel right in any of these." Emma sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. "You're being ridiculous. You're gorgeous. It's just a dinner." But it wasn't just a dinner. Sia's heart raced as she glanced at herself again, her reflection staring back at her with a mix of insecurity and hope. She wanted to look good, to feel good, to be confident. She didn't want to show up to dinner feeling like she wasn't enough, and the pressure of wanting everything to be perfect weighed heavily on her. She tried another dress, the fabric smooth against her skin, and turned to Emma. "This one, maybe." Emma raised an eyebrow, her eyes lighting up. You look amazing in it. Why do you keep second-guessing yourself? Sia hesitated, running a hand through her hair, her mind spinning with the same doubts. What if it's too much? What if it's not enough? The fear of being judged, of messing up, gnawed at her. No, she muttered, shaking her head, setting the dress down. I don't think it's right. Emma threw herself back on the bed in mock exasperation. Sia, you're making this way more complicated than it needs to be. You're already making a good impression by just being yourself. Relax. Sia let out a deep breath and finally sank onto the bed next to her friend. I just want this night to go well, Emma. I want it to be perfect, I guess. I want Leo to see me for who I really am, and I don't want to mess that up. Emma smiled, sitting up and nudging her friend gently. You don't need to be perfect, Sia. Just be yourself. That's what's going to impress him. But Sia wasn't so sure. She was still unsure of what being herself would mean in a moment like this. Her internal state was a whirlwind of excitement, hope, and fear all wrapped up in one. She ran her fingers through her hair again, staring at the dresses, the pressure still mounting in her chest. What if he doesn't like me? What if he thinks I'm not enough? Taking a deep breath, she finally picked the one dress she had kept coming back to, a soft, flowing number that hugged her curves just enough without feeling overdone. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. She gave a quiet nod to herself in the mirror. This will do. It has to. Sia took another deep breath as she slipped into the dress, her hands moving slower now as she adjusted the fabrics and checked her reflection. There was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, but it was paired with something else, a growing sense of determination. She would make this work. Tonight would be the start of something new, no matter how it turned out. Emma glanced over and grinned. See, you look stunning. Sia met her friend's eyes in the mirror, feeling a flutter of reassurance. Thanks, she whispered, her voice softer now, but the excitement began to creep back in, overtaking the nervousness. Can't wait to see you tonight. Leo knew how to make a woman feel. Feel it. Hitting the right spot. A grin tugged at her lips, and for a moment, she felt a warmth spreading through her. He was just as excited as she was. The night was just beginning, and tonight could be the start of something real. The soft hum of quiet conversation and clinking glasses filled the air as Leo sat back in his seat, a glass of wine in hand. He'd arrived early, giving himself some time to settle in, to absorb the surroundings. That evening, Leo looked every bit the part of a man who effortlessly commanded attention. His dark hair was slightly tousled, the sharp angles of his jaw softened by a hint of scruff. Amber eyes glowed in the dim light, holding a dangerous yet inviting edge. Dressed in a tailored suit, his lean frame moved with the grace of a predator, exuding both elegance and raw power. He swirled the wine in his glass, lost in thought, waiting for Sia. He didn't know what to expect when she walked in. But when she did, the entire room seemed to fall away. She stood in the doorway, her presence so striking that for a brief moment, he forgot how to breathe. Her dress hugged her curves just right, the soft fabric flowing effortlessly with each step she took. Her hair cascaded in gentle waves, and the faint glow of the candlelight reflected in her eyes, making them sparkle. She looked stunning, breathtaking. Leo stood up immediately, his heart picking up its pace. Sia, he said, his voice coming out smoother than he expected. He stepped forward, taking her in with a look that lingered just a moment too long. You look amazing. Sia blushed, the words clearly affecting her as she smiled shyly. Thanks, she said softly, taking a step closer. Sia smiled, a little nervous but clearly flattered. You're not so bad yourself, she replied, though she couldn't hide the nervousness in her voice. Leo's heart was still racing. He tried to shake off the feeling, to maintain his usual playful tone, but it was impossible. The tension between them had shifted, there was no denying it. He wanted to say something clever, to ease the weight of the moment, but all that came out was, seriously, I'm a little stunned here. Sia's eyes softened as she took in his expression, a quiet warmth building between them. The playful teasing they had before felt miles away now, replaced by something deeper, something more real. It felt like they were standing on the edge of something, but neither of them was ready to jump just yet. They sat down, and the conversation began to flow more easily. The usual chatter came naturally, but there was an undercurrent to everything now, a quiet pulse that hummed in the air between them. As the meal progressed, Leo couldn't stop stealing glances at her, at how her lips moved as she spoke, how her eyes caught the candlelight, how everything about her seemed to captivate him more than he could have imagined. Sia, too, felt the change. There was a softness in Leo's gaze that wasn't there when they first met. He was no longer the charming bad boy, the playful tease. Now he was different. Now the charming man, her wolf and her wanted to devour so badly. And as the evening wore on, she couldn't ignore the way her body reacted to his proximity, the way her heart raced every time their hands brushed. By the time dessert was served, the atmosphere between them had grown heavy, the quiet moments of laughter now laced with something else, something more intense, more charged. Leo reached across the table, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, his fingers lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "Is this real?" Sia's voice was barely a whisper, as if she were afraid to break the fragile bubble they had created. Leo's voice was low, his eyes locking onto hers. "It feels real." His words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Sia's pulse quickened, the tension between them now palpable, almost unbearable. Her wolf, the one that always simmered just beneath the surface, stirred restlessly. She wanted to reach for him, to close the distance between them, to feel his touch. Leo seemed to sense it, his gaze darkening as he leaned in closer, his breath warm against her skin. "You have no idea what you're doing to me right now," he murmured, his voice rough, just enough to send a shiver down her spine. Sia's heart hammered in her chest, her breath quickening as she tried to steady herself. The urge to give in, to let herself fall into him, was almost overwhelming. She found herself frozen in place, caught between the desire to be close to him and the fear of how quickly things were spiraling out of control. She looked down for a minute, her face blushed and her blood literally and visibly shaking. He put his hands on hers. She looked up and their eyes locked. "Let's get out of here," Leo said. Chapter 3. "You're really glowing these days," Emma had said, noticing the shift in her. Sia smiled, her thoughts drifting back to Leo. How effortlessly he'd slipped into her world. How quickly they'd become inseparable. Things felt perfect. More than good. She never imagined she could feel this whole, this at peace, after all the walls she'd built around herself. Sia sat across from Emma at their favorite cafe, her fingers lightly tapping against her coffee cup as she beamed. It had been 3 months since she and Leo had gotten together, and everything felt like it was falling into place. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this alive, this happy. Leo had become her safe place, her confidant, the one person who made everything seem easier. "Things are really good, you know," she said to Emma, her voice light, almost dreamy. "I never imagined I'd feel this settled. He's amazing. Just everything I could want." Emma smiled, her eyes soft with warmth. "I'm so happy for you, Sia. I can tell you've changed, too. You seem so much more at peace." Sia took a deep breath, her smile still there, but a slight twinge of uncertainty flickered behind her eyes. "Yeah, it's been incredible. But lately I don't know. I've been noticing something about him." Emma leaned in, her expression shifting to one of concern. "What do you mean? You guys seem like you're in a good place." Sia hesitated, her fingers twisting the napkin in her lap. "That's just it. We are."
"But—"
Her voice trailed off, and she caught herself, her chest tightening. She didn't want to say it out loud, but she knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. "There's a distance, sometimes. He's so perfect, you know? He's always there, but every now and then, I feel like there's this wall he's putting up. Like he's scared of something." Emma frowned, her brow furrowing in concern. "What do you mean by scared?" Sia bit her lip, her thoughts racing. "It's like, when we talk about the future, he gets quiet. He won't make any plans past a certain point. And sometimes, I catch him looking at me like he's afraid to get too close. I mean, he's never said anything, but I can feel it." Emma's eyes softened with understanding, and she leaned back in her chair. "You think he's afraid of commitment?" Sia nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think he's afraid of losing control. Maybe he's scared that if we get too close, it's going to change everything." Her mind was a whirl of doubts now, the fear she'd been pushing aside suddenly surfacing. "It's just, I don't know, Emma. It's hard to explain. He doesn't say it, but I feel it. Emma reached across the table, placing a hand gently on Sia's. Sia, I'm sure he cares about you. But sometimes people have their own fears and baggage. Maybe he's still working through his own stuff. Sia let out a deep sigh, her chest heavy with worry. I don't know if I can keep doing this if he's not all in. I want him to be, but it feels like there's always something holding him back. What if I'm just not enough? The excitement that had filled her heart moments ago had shifted, replaced with a quiet fear, a sinking feeling in her stomach. What if she was wrong? What if Leo wasn't as committed as she thought? What if she'd given too much of herself, only to find out he wasn't ready for the same? I don't want to lose him, Sia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, her gaze dropping to the table. But what if he's never going to be ready to give me what I need? Emma sat quietly for a moment, giving Sia the space to process the weight of her words. Finally, she spoke, her tone gentle. You deserve someone who is ready, Sia. But don't sell yourself short. If he's really the one for you, he'll have to face whatever it is that's holding him back. Why don't you talk to him? Maybe you guys can walk through it, Emma added. Sia looked up, her heart heavy with doubt, but a small flicker of hope still burned within her. She wasn't ready to give up on Leo, not yet. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between them, and that shift might just be the thing that tore them apart. Leo, she began, her voice soft but firm, is everything okay? Leo glanced at her, his eyes briefly flickering with something, a casual smirk playing on his lips. Yeah, it's just work, you know? Been a bit crazy lately. He ran a hand through his hair, looking away for a moment, his smile barely reaching his eyes. Sia nodded, but her heart sank. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that it was just work like he said, but something felt off. Her wolf could sense it, the subtle shift in his energy, the way he was holding himself back. As the night wore on, the distance between them seemed to grow even more. Leo's words didn't match the feeling in the room. He was there physically, but emotionally he was a world away. And that was when Sia felt it. The sharp prickling sensation along her spine, the sudden restlessness in her chest. Her wolf was stirring, pacing inside her, agitated and anxious. It was like a warning bell going off inside her, but she couldn't pinpoint why. She stood up from the couch, pacing around the room, trying to shake off the unease. Leo, she said, her voice growing more strained, this isn't just about work, is it? You're hiding something from me. Leo's eyes flickered again, a brief flash of guilt before he quickly masked it with a shrug. No, honey, it's nothing. I'm just tired. You're overthinking things. But the words felt empty. She could feel the shift in the air, the weight of something unspoken pressing down on her. Her wolf was growing restless, pacing inside her, but she couldn't place what was wrong. It wasn't like anything she'd experienced before. It wasn't fear or danger, just an overwhelming sense that something was off. Sia stepped closer to him, her heart pounding in her chest, the confusion growing. Leo, tell me what's really going on, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Something's wrong, and I need to know what it is. Leo stood up, his expression softening, but there was a distant look in his eyes. He reached out to touch her shoulder, but the connection felt shallow, as if he was pulling away. I swear it's nothing. Just work, he repeated, but his voice lacked the conviction it once had. Sia stared at him, her mind spinning, her wolf still on edge, but no closer to finding out what was really happening. The confusion swirled inside her, filling the space between them, and she was left with nothing but the gnawing feeling that something was slipping away, and she didn't know how to stop it. Her heart ached with the uncertainty, but the deeper fear was that Leo wasn't being honest with her, and that scared her more than anything else. Sia stood at the door of Leo's house, her heart fluttering in her chest. She had been waiting for this moment all day, hoping, no, praying that it would be different. They hadn't seen each other much over the past week, and she could feel the tension between them, but she convinced herself that maybe it was just a phase. Maybe it was just work, like Leo had said. He had asked her to meet him here tonight, and she told herself that it was to talk things through, to fix whatever was broken. She rang the doorbell, the sound echoing through her nerves. A few moments later, Leo opened the door, his expression unreadable. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, but it vanished so quickly that she couldn't place it. Hey, she said, smiling, trying to suppress the fluttering in her stomach. She stepped inside, brushing past him, her hands suddenly clammy. You wanted to talk? Leo nodded, stepping back to let her in, but he didn't smile. Yeah, he said, his voice softer than usual, almost strained. Sia felt the pit in her stomach deepen. She nodded, following him into the living room. This isn't right, her mind screamed, but she couldn't understand why. I've been thinking a lot, Leo said, looking away for a moment, his fingers tapping nervously against his leg. And I think we need to talk about where we're going. Or, rather, where we're not going. Sia's breath hitched in her chest. She had a sudden, sinking feeling, but she ignored it. She could still fix this. What do you mean? She asked, trying to sound casual, though her voice wavered. Sia, I don't think I can do this. With you. I'm not in the right place to give you what you deserve. I'm sorry. Sia froze. The words hit her like a physical blow. She blinked, trying to process them. But they felt like they were coming from somewhere far away, as though they weren't even meant for her. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She had thought they were just going to talk, fix whatever was wrong. Maybe it's just a rough patch. Maybe it's just work, she kept telling herself. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. Leo, what are you saying? You're breaking up with me? Where is this coming from? Leo's face was a mask of regret. I think it's for the best, he said, his words cold, though his eyes softened, like he was trying to soften the blow. I'm just not ready. I can't be what you need, Sia. She shook her head in disbelief. No, she said, the word coming out more as a plea than anything else. I don't believe this. We've been so good, Leo. We've been so happy. She searched his eyes, looking for any sign that he was joking, that he didn't mean it, but all she saw was certainty. Maybe we were, he said, his voice quieter now. I'm sorry, Sia. I can't do this anymore. Sia felt her heart crumble in her chest. She wanted to scream, to ask him why, to make him understand. She had loved him. She had trusted him. And now, just like that, it was over. He was rejecting her, leaving her no reason. Not like this. The heartbreak crashed over her, hot tears blurring her vision. She looked away, her chest tightening. I don't get it. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Her voice cracked, but she couldn't stop it. She felt small, invisible, like nothing she had given or felt mattered at all. I didn't know how, Leo murmured. But I know now. I can't give you what you deserve, Sia. I'm not the guy for you. Sia stood up suddenly, her hands trembling, her entire body shaking with emotion. You don't even know what I deserve, she snapped, her voice thick with tears. You don't get to decide that. She took a deep breath, the realization settling into her chest like a stone. It's over. She felt the walls close in around her, the suffocating weight of rejection crushing her. Her mind spiraled. What's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? She turned away quickly, fighting the tears that threatened to spill over. I guess I'll go, she choked out, her voice barely audible. Yeah, Leo said softly, not daring to look her in the eye. As the door closed behind her, the sound echoed like the final nail in a coffin. Her steps were staggered, like she was learning to walk all over again, each one heavy with the weight of what she had just lost. The night swallowed her, cold and suffocating, as her heart cracked open, its pieces scattering into the darkness. She wanted to scream, to beg him to take it back, but his words clung to her like poison, and with each step, she realized, with sickening clarity, she was left with nothing. Sia, a voice called to her. Chapter 4. Sia turned back, her heart pounding in her chest. There was no one. Her mind was playing tricks with her, playing tricks us. She stared at the empty street, waiting for some sign, some flicker of movement that might reassure her, but the silence only deepened. She had hoped it was him. Maybe there was a change of mind, or maybe it wasn't real. Maybe all of it had been a misunderstanding. She had hoped for anything but this. The crushing weight of reality settled back onto her shoulders, suffocating, and she couldn't escape it. Her hands shook as she ran them through her hair, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What did I do wrong? She asked herself over and over, but the answer remained stubbornly out of reach. It wasn't just the breakup, it was the way it ended. The way Leo had looked at her that night, distant and detached. Was it me? Was I not enough? She hated the way her mind kept returning to those questions, clawing at her from the inside, making it impossible to move forward. She had given him everything. Her heart, her trust, her hope. But now, she felt hollow, like the person she had been had just vanished. The sting of rejection still burned in her chest, raw and relentless. The way his words hung in the air, cold and final, tore at the remnants of her confidence. I'm not enough, she thought, and the thought made her heart ache. For a moment, she thought about calling him, her hand hovering over her phone, the urge to reach out clawing at her chest. She wanted to know what had changed, to ask why, what did I do wrong? She longed for closure, some explanation that could make sense of the broken pieces he left behind. But then, the weight of the silence fell on her. What would it change? Nothing. He had made his choice. The thought hit her like a brick, cold and unforgiving. In the stillness of the night, the truth settled in her bones. She couldn't go back. She wouldn't go back. The past wasn't hers to reclaim. Her mind was a storm, thoughts crashing together, regret, pain, and confusion. But amid the chaos, there was something else, something she hadn't felt in days, weeks even. It was a spark, faint but undeniable. Hope. She held on to it like a lifeline, not sure if it would stay, but unwilling to let it go. Maybe this isn't the end, she thought. Maybe it's just the beginning of something else, something for me. She closed her eyes, letting out a shaky breath, grounding herself in the moment. Slowly, she stood straighter, her legs trembling as if they too had forgotten how to stand strong. But this time, she pushed through the fear. She was ready to take the next step, whatever that would be. I will move on, she whispered to herself, the words fragile, yet growing stronger with each breath. I will heal, and I will be better for this. Look, one of the men said, leaning back in his chair, we're not convinced. Your proposal isn't quite what we had in mind. Raphael's jaw tightened, and he forced a calm smile. We've discussed the terms. I've adjusted as needed. What exactly is the issue now? The other man shifted uncomfortably. It's just not going to work for us, he said, his tone dismissive. We're not interested in moving forward. Raphael sat across from the two businessmen, his fingers drumming against the surface of the conference table. The air was thick with tension as the meeting dragged on, the words flying back and forth like empty promises. He had come to finalize the deal, confident that everything was in place. But with every minute that passed, his hope for a smooth resolution began to slip further away. Raphael felt the frustration build inside him, an undercurrent of anger at how far things had deteriorated. He had spent days preparing for this, and now it seemed like they weren't even going to come close to a deal. Raphael stood out in every room he entered. Tall, muscular, with black hair that framed his sharp features. His piercing brown eyes and defined jawline made him look every bit the confident alpha wolf he was, while the snake tattoo on his bicep added a touch of rebellion. Despite his polished, wealth-infused exterior, he carried a quiet competitiveness, always looking to prove himself, especially in the face of his rivalry. But there was more to Raphael than just his bravado. Behind the tough persona, he had a surprisingly soft spot for things like gardening, something he never shared with most people. When no one was watching, he'd find solace in his garden, tending to plants with the same care and precision he applied to his business. His hands, which could command any room, were gently coaxing life from the earth. And in the rare moments when he needed to unwind, he'd be found buried in a collection of rare vintage books, completely lost in the pages of a romance novel, a stark contrast to his fierce and driven persona. I see, Raphael said, his voice controlled but cold. Well, thank you for your time. I think this meeting is over. He stood abruptly, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor punctuating the finality of the moment. The two men exchanged uncomfortable glances but said nothing further as Raphael turned and walked out of the room. The meeting didn't go the way he wanted, but leaving that room his thoughts shifted. As a kid he loved going to the park, and because of work he left this town and hasn't come in years. He wanted to go to the park and just relive past beautiful memories. His body tingled with joy of past memories. Julian, let's go to the park. We would be leaving tomorrow, let's have a breather, Raphael said to his ever-loyal PA. She had seen him from a distance, her heart racing, Leo, sitting on a bench by the fountain. She didn't plan to see him here, but now she did. She couldn't stop her feet from moving towards him, and her mind wanting some answers. A form of closure. Her footsteps quickened as she approached. Why? Why did you reject me? She had to know. She had to hear it from him. When Leo looked up and saw her, his face didn't soften. Instead, his expression hardened. Leo, she said, her voice steady but her pulse quickening. Answer me, she shouted, keeping her voice high but low. Leo didn't move at first. He just stared at her, the hint of annoyance flashing in his eyes before he sighed and leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. I have nothing to say. His tone was cool, distant, like he was already trying to distance himself from the conversation before it even began. Sia's heart sank, but she pushed forward. Yes, you do. I need to understand. I thought we meant something. She took a step closer, desperate for him to see her pain, to feel the weight of what his rejection had done to her. I need to know why, Leo. Why didn't you fight for us? Why did you just walk away? Leo's eyes flickered for a moment, but he quickly masked whatever emotion had crossed his face. I told you already, he said dismissively, not even meeting her eyes. I'm not the right guy for you, Sia. You deserve more than I can give. Sia's chest tightened as his words hit her like a punch to the gut. She took another step closer, her voice trembling now. That's it? Just not the right guy? You don't even care enough to explain? I'm supposed to just accept that? Her heart was pounding in her ears, and she could feel the tears welling up again. But she refused to let them fall. Not now. Not when she needed answers. Leo's gaze shifted, cold and unreadable. You're asking for things I can't give? I don't owe you an explanation. He looked away, his tone hardening. Her chest felt like it was collapsing. She had hoped, no, she had believed, that there was something still between them, that he would finally open up. But instead, all she saw was a wall, a man who had shut her out completely. Leo. Her voice cracked as she fought to keep herself together. I don't understand. We had something, didn't we? What happened to that? The desperation in her voice was raw, but she could feel the space between them widening with each word. He stood up then, his body language closed off, and for the first time, Sia saw just how far apart they truly were. Leo didn't look back as he started to walk away, his pace steady, unbothered. Sia stood there, frozen. She couldn't even move, couldn't even breathe for a few seconds. She fell on the seat, trying to hold back the tears, but she couldn't. It first came as drops, and before she could realize, she flowed out more like a river, cry me a river. Sia's tears kept flowing. The world around her felt distant, muffled. A tissue appeared in her line of sight, and she blinked through her blurry vision to find a man standing there, offering it to her. His expression was calm, almost too calm, as though he was used to these kinds of moments. Sia taking the tissue and replying with a thank you. He stood there, his gaze on her. You can't be serious, she said, her voice thick with emotion as she took the tissue. Don't you have better things to do than watch me cry? Raphael didn't flinch at her words. Instead, he sat down next to her, his presence quiet but grounding. No, not really, he said simply, his tone still steady. Sia turned her head slightly, a bit caught off guard by his lack of offense. You're not going to leave? She asked, her voice almost incredulous. Raphael shook his head, a small smile pulling at the corner of his lips. I used to come here as a kid, he said, looking out at the view before them. I loved it. There was something peaceful about the place. I guess it still got that effect. Sia raised an eyebrow, the edge of her bitterness softening a little. So what? You just like to hang around watching people cry? He chuckled, the sound low but sincere. No, he said after a beat, but when I saw you, I thought maybe you could use some company. Besides, I'm not doing anything else. Sia didn't know how to respond to that, so she just stayed quiet, focusing on the tissue in her hand. Her thoughts were a whirlpool of confusion, but Raphael's calm presence helped slow the storm in her head, even if just a little. After a long pause, Raphael broke the silence. All right, I've shared one of my stories. Now it's your turn, he said, leaning back slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. Tell me, what's the one that's making you cry? Raphael gave a small, teasing smile. You know, he said, I actually have a master's degree in helping crying people stop crying. Sia couldn't help but snort, the tiniest smile breaking through her guarded expression. It was a ridiculous statement, but in the best way possible. It felt human, like he was trying to make her feel comfortable without pushing too hard. Yeah, well, it's not working, she replied, the tension in her voice melting just slightly. Raphael chuckled softly, then leaned in slightly, his eyes now more playful. All right then. You don't want to tell me your sad story? That's fine. Tell me another one. A good one. I'm sure you have one that'll trade in a little better. Sia looked at him for a moment, then sighed, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. She shifted a little, leaning back slightly, her arms folded. She felt lighter, maybe not okay, but a little less heavy. She started speaking, telling him a funny story about her childhood, about a time when she and her best friend had tried to start a lemonade stand that ended in chaos. It wasn't the deepest story, but it made her feel a little less weighed down. She felt Raphael's attention on her, listening intently, and for the first time in what felt like ages, she wasn't self-conscious about it. They talked for a while, the lightness of the conversation taking her mind off her own troubles. But eventually her phone rang, cutting into their moment. Sia glanced at it, a frown pulling at her brow. Sorry, she said quickly, swiping to answer the call. It's my best friend. I really need to go. Raphael stared at her, only realizing when she was out of sight that he hadn't asked her name nor collected her number. Sir? Sir. Julian, his loyal PA's call bringing back to reality. Julian, my dear friend, putting his hands on his shoulder, I have a very, very important job for you to do. Chapter 5. Sir, please don't forget we have to fly out tomorrow, and we can't be distracted. A glance at his phone screen only deepened his frustration. The emails piled up, urgent reminders from his company, requests for his presence, more obligations to meet. The weight of his responsibilities pressed down on him, heavy and insistent. Raphael, a voice interrupted his thoughts, cutting through the quiet tension. His PA looking both composed and concerned. You need to get back to the office. There are a dozen things waiting for your attention. He didn't look at him. Still too absorbed in thoughts. I know, he muttered, the words coming out clipped. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling to the surface. I don't know if I want to go back. Julian's eyes narrowed, her tone practical. The deal's fallen through, I understand that, but you can't afford to let things slip now. The company needs you back there, keeping everything together. Raphael remained silent, the pull of the city around him. Sir. Julian's voice sliced through the quiet again, a little sharper now. You're not really thinking of staying here, are you? He turned to face him, his eyes hardening. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not like I planned on this.
But...
His voice trailed off, as if the words themselves betrayed his thoughts. He had started to imagine what it might be like to stay longer, to figure out what had drawn him to this place, and to her. Julian's brow furrowed, his lips pressed into a tight line. You've never been one to let personal things interfere with business, sir. I can't understand why this time would be any different. There it was again. That sharp edge of reality cutting through the fantasy of what could be, what might be. He was right. Raphael always put his company first. He'd always been driven by success, by ambition, by goals he set for himself, and yet there was something here, something he couldn't shake. I can't just leave, he said, his voice quieter now but firm. I don't want to. Julian's eyes softened with exasperation. Raphael, don't make a mistake. You've got obligations. People are counting on you. Raphael stopped, turning to face her directly. His voice was low but resolute. I'm not abandoning anything, Julian. I'm choosing something different. For once. Julian opened his mouth as if to argue but closed it again, seeing the determination in his eyes. She sighed, frustration and resignation mixing in her expression. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. I'll stay, he said to himself. Julian stood outside the hotel room, staring at his phone, the screen glowing with a message from Raphael. Find her, it read. That was all. Simple, direct. Raphael had a way of giving orders that left little room for ambiguity, but in this case, Julian couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just a routine task. He didn't know Sia. Not really. He'd overheard snippets of conversation between Raphael and her during their previous meeting, enough to know she was an artist. His instructions were simple. Find Sia, deliver the message, and set up dinner. But that was easier said than done. He had no idea where to begin, other than the fact that she worked in some kind of art studio. Julian wasn't used to hunting down people in a city he barely knew, but he had to give it a shot. There were stakes now. Raphael was counting on him. As he walked through the area, Julian felt out of place among the artists and creatives. The buildings were covered with murals, and the air had a kind of free-flowing energy he wasn't accustomed to. It was only when he rounded a corner and caught sight of a familiar name painted on the side of a building that his heart picked up a beat. Sia's studio. Relieved but now feeling the pressure of the task, Julian entered. "I'm looking for Sia," Julian said, trying to keep his tone casual. "That's me," she replied, her voice cautious. "What do you want?" Julian cleared his throat, wondering how to phrase this without sounding too forward. "I'm Julian. I work with Raphael. He wanted me to pass on an invitation. He'd like to see you again." Sia didn't say anything at first, her eyes narrowing as she processed his words. There was a brief moment of silence before she shook her head slightly. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," she said, her voice hesitant. As Sia glanced at her work, her friend, who had been quietly observing from the side, stood up and moved toward her. "Look, Sia, you need to get out of your head for a while," the friend said, giving her a gentle nudge. "Maybe this is a chance for you to clear your mind. You've been cooped up in here for too long." Sia hesitated, her gaze flickering between her friend and Julian. "It's not like that," she said, shaking her head. "I'm not looking for anything romantic, okay? Julian nodded quickly, understanding the line she was drawing. "Of course. Just dinner. Nothing more." Sia took a deep breath, considering his words. "All right," she said finally. "But just dinner. Nothing complicated. It's been a long week." "Understood," Julian said, his voice calm and professional. "I'll set it up then. Would 8 p.m. tonight be good?" Sia gave him a small nod, signaling that the arrangement was made. She looked over at her friend, who gave her a reassuring smile. As Julian left the studio, a message buzzed on his phone from Raphael. Did she agree? Julian paused in the street, looking at the message. He texted, "Yes, sir, you have a dinner by 8. Nothing romantic." Tonight wasn't about his business, wasn't about his reputation. It was about a chance to connect with someone in a real way. A chance he didn't want to waste. "Nice suit." The voice came from behind him, smooth and mocking. The kind Raphael had come to recognize all too well. He turned, his expression hardening as he faced Leo, tall, confident, with that same cocky smile that always made Raphael feel like he was being sized up. Leo had a way of appearing in Raphael's life at the most inconvenient moments, usually with a smug attitude that Raphael couldn't stand. This time was no different. "Leo," Raphael greeted, keeping his voice level. "What a surprise," Leo chuckled, his eyes glinting with a mix of amusement and something else, something sharp, like he already knew something Raphael didn't. "I could say the same," Leo replied, glancing at Raphael's attire. "Dressed up for someone special, I see. You must have a big night planned." Raphael remained unfazed. He wasn't about to let Leo derail his focus. "I'm sure you didn't stop by just to comment on my suit." Leo's smirk faltered for a moment, then returned, his gaze narrowing. "Actually, no. I've got some business of my own, but something caught my attention when I saw you. Which unlucky lady are you disturbing tonight?" Raphael's lips tightened slightly, but he didn't rise to the bait. "Unlucky lady," he echoed, his voice smooth but laced with a subtle edge. "I wasn't aware you kept tabs on my personal life, Leo." Leo's smirk widened, clearly enjoying the tension he was creating. "Oh, I pay attention," he replied, taking a step closer. "You always seem to have someone new, don't you? Care to share? Or are you too shy for that?" Raphael crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow. "I'm sure you've got your own agenda, Leo. Why don't you focus on that?" Leo chuckled, clearly not deterred. "My agenda? Always a pleasure to watch you dance around the question. You're not a hard read, Raphael. I know exactly what you're up to." Raphael remained calm, despite the growing irritation. He had no intention of indulging in Leo's games. "I'm not interested in a game, Leo. Just here to enjoy my evening." Leo leaned in slightly, his tone playful but tinged with something sharper. "You're always so serious. Loosen up, man. You might actually enjoy it." Raphael smirked, but there was no humor in it. and miss out on the chance to have this delightful conversation with you? I think I'll pass. In high school, Leo was always the loudest in the room, his laughter echoing off locker walls and through crowded hallways. He'd tease Raphael relentlessly, pushing him in the halls and mocking his quiet, studious nature. The scent of gym sweat and cheap cologne always lingered as Leo would lean in, making cutting remarks about Raphael's geeky interests. Raphael, though, stayed focused, letting the taunts roll off him as he buried his nose in books. But every jab, every sneer, made him more determined to rise above. Leo's voice still echoed in his mind, a reminder of the rivalry that never truly ended. Leo leaned back with a smirk, eyes scanning Raphael as if trying to crack some hidden code. You know, Leo said, his tone playful but with a hint of something more, you really should let loose every once in a while. You might actually enjoy yourself for once. Raphael didn't miss a beat, his expression flat. I enjoy things on my terms, Leo. Not on yours. Leo chuckled, clearly not taking the bait. Same old Raphael, always too serious. Can't say I don't admire the persistence, though. The tension hung in the air as the two exchanged glances, neither willing to break the standoff. Finally, Raphael let out a small sigh, turning slightly toward his car, a subtle sign that he was ready to move on. Julian, who had been waiting off to the side, took a step forward. Sir, we have to go, he said, his voice cutting through the silence. We don't want to be keeping the young lady Sia waiting. Raphael didn't spare another glance at Leo as he climbed into the car. Julian was already in the driver's seat, starting the engine with a low hum that cut through the tension. Raphael leaned back, his mind already on the evening ahead. Leo's presence lingered like a bad aftertaste, but he had bigger things to focus on now. As the car pulled away, Leo stood there, staring after them. His eyes narrowed, and a sinking feeling started to settle in his chest. There was something about tonight that felt off, something he couldn't shake. Sia? He replayed the name in his mind, trying to make sense of it. Could it really be her? Was Raphael going after the same Sia he knew? He shook his head, trying to push the thought aside, but the coincidence gnawed at him. Sia wasn't some common name. There could be more Sias, of course, but why did the timing feel so strange? What if? Leo pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he searched through his contacts. He needed to call her, to make sure she wasn't caught up in whatever game Raphael was playing. His thumb hovered over the name, but as he tried to unlock his phone, a red notification flashed. Battery 1%. His heart sank. Damn it, Leo muttered under his breath, his frustration building as the phone powered off before he could even place the call. His mind raced as he glanced around, trying to figure out his next move, but there was nothing he could do now. He was stuck. The one person he needed to talk to, and his phone was dead. Standing there, alone in the street with his phone useless, Leo couldn't shake the feeling that tonight wasn't just a coincidence. Something was going on, and he wasn't going to let it slip by without figuring out what it meant for him and her. Chapter 6. Raphael sat across from Sia, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. He had planned for this night, this dinner, to be a step forward, but now that they were finally here, a part of him was uncertain. The conversation was flowing, but only on the surface. So, Raphael began, his voice steady but warm, tell me something about you. Something I wouldn't expect. Sia lifted her glass of wine, her fingers lightly tracing the rim before taking a sip. Something you wouldn't expect, she echoed, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. I'm not really sure how to answer that. Raphael leaned forward, his expression earnest. I don't mean a fun fact or a surface-level answer. I want to know something real. Something that tells me more about you. Sia hesitated, her gaze shifting toward the table, avoiding eye contact for a brief moment. She was clearly thinking, choosing her words carefully. You really want to know? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. I do. But only if you're ready to share. Sia took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly as she shifted in her seat. I don't talk about my past much, she began slowly, her fingers fiddling with the napkin in her lap. There's a lot of things I keep to myself. I guess it's just easier that way. Raphael watched her carefully, his own thoughts racing. This was the opening he'd been waiting for. But something in Sia's expression made him hesitant to push. You don't have to tell me everything, he said softly, leaning back. But maybe just a glimpse of what's behind the walls would help me understand you better. Sia's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and for a moment, Raphael worried he had pushed too hard. But then, after a long pause, she spoke again, her voice quieter now. I enjoy drawing hands, Sia said, her voice steady but filled with quiet passion as she looked down at her wineglass. She seemed to be weighing her words, choosing them carefully. Raphael raised an eyebrow, leaning forward slightly. Wait, just hands. Sia smiled softly, a slight shrug accompanying her words. Yeah, just hands. It's the one thing I've always been able to draw, and it's kind of become my thing. She paused, as if deciding how much she wanted to share. I don't draw full people, just hands. I find them fascinating. The way they move, the way they hold things, how they reflect a person's strength or vulnerability. There's so much to read in them. Raphael's curiosity piqued, and he shifted his gaze, genuinely interested. I never thought about it that way, he said quietly. What's so special about hands? Sia's eyes softened, her focus now entirely on the conversation. Hands are the most honest part of us, don't you think? You can tell so much by the way someone holds something, the scars on their palms, the way their fingers curl when they're nervous, or how they reach out for something they want. I guess for me, hands have always symbolized strength and vulnerability. They're the first thing we use to express ourselves, but they also show what we can't say. Raphael listened intently, feeling something stir inside him. Her words had depth, and he was captivated by the way she saw the world. He could feel the weight of the conversation, the truth in it. That's beautiful, he said, his voice almost a whisper. The way you see them, the way you find meaning in something so simple. Sia nodded, a quiet smile crossing her face. It's how I process everything. The lines in the palms, the way fingers stretch and curl, it's like the story of a person right there. And every time I draw them, I feel like I'm telling a part of my own story too. Raphael was silent for a moment, letting her words settle in. He hadn't expected this raw, unspoken truth that she was sharing. He could tell it was something deeply personal for her, and he felt honored she was letting him in. That's amazing, he said softly, his voice filled with genuine admiration. You've turned something so intimate into your art. Sia looked down for a moment, a softness in her expression. Yeah, I guess it's my way of staying connected to the things that matter. And when things get overwhelming, I can always go back to it. The lines and curves never change. It's my safe space. Raphael smiled, a little moved by how much meaning she found in something so simple. He wanted to understand more, to see the world through her eyes, to learn about the parts of her that were still hidden. I think I'd love to see what you've drawn sometime. Sia met his gaze again, her smile widening just slightly. Maybe one day, she said almost shyly. He could see it in the way she spoke, her eyes lighting up with passion, something he hadn't expected, something raw and real. When she finished, her gaze softened, her voice turning curious. Tell me something about you, she said, tilting her head slightly. Something I wouldn't expect. Raphael leaned back in his chair, his fingers brushing the edge of his wine glass as he thought. This was a rare moment, one where he wasn't sure how much he wanted to reveal. But Sia had opened up to him, and now he felt the pull to share something in return. He looked at her, half smiling. You want the weird stuff? The stuff no one would guess. Sia raised an eyebrow, amused. Why not? I've already shared my secret love for hands. Now it's your turn. Raphael let out a small laugh, then rested his chin on his hand, thinking. All right, well, I guess you wouldn't expect that I'm obsessed with gardening. Like, I have a whole collection of rare plants. I've got more plants in my place than I do furniture. Sia blinked, surprised, then chuckled. I would have never guessed that. You seem more like the type to buy sleek, modern decor. I didn't expect you to be a plant guy. Raphael shrugged, a sheepish smile tugging at his lips. I find it relaxing. Something about getting my hands in the dirt, watching things grow. I don't know, it's therapeutic. It's the one thing that grounds me when everything else feels like chaos. Sia smiled, clearly amused. Well, I guess I can respect that. A little greenery never hurt anyone. But okay, tell me, what's the other side of you? The one no one expects. Raphael leaned back a little, his eyes twinkling as he met her gaze. All right, fine. You want the real oddity? I'm totally obsessed with romantic comedy novels. Like, completely. It's embarrassing, honestly. I've read more rom-com books than I care to admit. Sia's eyebrows shot up, both surprised and intrigued. You? The charming, confident guy? Reading rom-coms. She teased, her voice light. I would have pegged you for something more serious. Raphael laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. I know it's a bit of a contrast. But hey, there's something about them. The humor, the charm, the happy endings. I don't know. It's like a break from the real world. Something simple and feel good. Sia grinned, clearly enjoying this side of him. Okay, I like this. You've got a soft side. Raphael raised an eyebrow, playing along. Oh, you think so? Want to hear more about my favorite romantic comedy novel? Sia tapped her chin thoughtfully, a playful gleam in her eye. You know what? I think I want to know more about your gardening obsession first. Raphael raised both eyebrows in mock surprise. Really? Not the rom-com. I'm shocked. Sia laughed, shaking her head. Let's make it fun. You pick a hand. One for gardening, one for romantic comedies, and whichever one I pick, you have to tell me the story. Raphael grinned, enjoying the game. He stretched out his hands, one palm open, the other closed, holding his little secret inside. Alright, go ahead. Which one's it gonna be? Sia eyed them both, her gaze lingering on his right hand for a moment longer. She then pointed. That one? Raphael smiled and opened his right hand, revealing a small but proud grin. The rom-com side. The truth comes out. Sia chuckled and leaned in slightly, teasing him. So, did that hand show love? Was there a glitter of romance in it? Is that why you picked it? Raphael couldn't help but laugh, the playful tension between them building. I'm not sure it was love, but there's definitely some charm in there. You think I've got a heart under all this tough guy exterior? Sia smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. Alright, spill. I'm curious now. What is it about rom-coms that grabs you so much? Raphael leaned in, his tone now a little more earnest as he settled into the story. It's the simplicity of it, I think. The idea that no matter how messy life gets, somehow it all works out in the end. It's like a perfect escape, and I like the humor in them. It's refreshing. I don't think people take enough time to laugh, to appreciate those light moments. Sia nodded, genuinely interested now. I get that. It's nice to believe in happy endings, especially when the real world is complicated. Raphael smiled softly, a little more vulnerable than before. Yeah, and there's something oddly comforting about knowing that even when everything else feels off, there's always someone who's going to end up with their person. In the end, it's all about connection, right? Sia was quiet for a moment, taking in his words. She smiled warmly, her expression softening. You know, I can't say I blame you for that. Maybe I need to read one of those novels sometime. Raphael laughed, his eyes meeting hers. I'll pick one out for you, but only if you promise to read it with an open heart. Sia chuckled, shaking her head. Deal. But only if you promise to talk to me about your plants next time. Fair enough, Raphael said with a wink. I'll show you the whole collection. The night air had cooled as Raphael and Sia walked side by side. Sia seemed more relaxed now, her smile softer. The walls she had put up during dinner beginning to crumble as they moved through the night. Raphael, too, felt lighter, but there was something still lingering, an uncertainty, an unease he couldn't shake. Where are we going next? Sia asked, her voice playful but curious, her eyes catching the street lights as they passed. Raphael hesitated, then glanced over at her, a slight grin tugging at his lips. I was thinking about the place you mentioned earlier, he said, voice a bit tentative. The one where you forcing me to face my fears. Sia's eyes lit up immediately, a mix of excitement and encouragement flooding her expression. You remembered, she said with a smile. I thought you'd forget about it. Raphael let out a nervous laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm not sure I'm ready to face anything, but I'm here and I guess I said I'd try. Sia nudged him lightly with her shoulder, her smile broadening. That's the spirit. It's all about taking that first step, Raphael. I'll be right there with you. I promise. It won't be as bad as you're imagining. I don't know, he said, his voice quieter now, the doubt creeping in. I have a crazy fear for heights. Sia stopped walking for a moment, turning to face him fully. Her gaze softened, her eyes sincere. Raphael, you don't have to do this for me. But I know you can handle it. It's about pushing past the fear, not letting it control you. She stopped talking for a moment and got lost in her thoughts. Maybe she was talking to herself through Raphael. Maybe she was also telling herself to be strong and bold, to face her demons too and move on. Life can teach you things in the craziest of ways, she thought to herself before continuing walking, and Raphael walking calmly by her side. Taking a deep breath, Raphael straightened up. All right, he said, his voice firmer now. Let's do it. Sia's eyes sparkled with pride, and she reached out, giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. I knew you could do it. Let's go face our fears together. Are you ready? She asked, her voice soft but filled with certainty. Raphael swallowed, his stomach a tangled mess of nerves. But at that moment, he knew what he had to do. Yeah, he said, his voice steady now. Let's do this. Raphael and Sia stepped out onto the rooftop of a high-rise building. The view stretched out before them. An endless expanse of city lights twinkling below, the far horizon blending into the dusky sky. Sia's eyes sparkled, the cityscape mirroring the excitement on her face as she breathed in the scene around them. This was her element, her happy place, where the world felt small, manageable, and full of possibilities. Raphael, on the other hand, stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the dizzying drop below. His heart pounded in his chest, a tightening knot forming in his stomach. The wind brushed against his skin, but he barely noticed it. The vertigo was overwhelming, making the ground beneath him feel unstable. Heights had never been something he could easily conquer. He had always kept his distance, avoiding situations like this one. Sia turned to look at him, a soft, knowing smile on her lips. Isn't it amazing? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. I love how it makes everything look so small, so peaceful. Raphael forced a smile, but it was shaky at best. Yeah, amazing, he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. He stepped back, instinctively moving away from the edge. The anxiety clawed at him, and he could feel his palms beginning to sweat. Sia grinned, her eyes lighting up. You're seriously going to back out now? Raphael shot her a playful look, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm not backing out. Just making sure you know this is all your fault. Oh, I'm definitely taking the blame for this one, she teased, stepping closer. But hey, we're in this together, right? He glanced at her, a slight smile creeping onto his face. You're not going to let me fall, are you? Sia raised an eyebrow. No promises. Raphael let out a nervous laugh, taking a step closer to the edge. Well, if I do fall, at least you'll have a great story to tell. Sia chuckled, reaching out and giving his arm a light squeeze. We've got this, Raphael. Together. With one last deep breath, Raphael nodded, feeling more confident than he had in minutes. All right, let's do it. As the evening stretched on, the city lights sparkling below, Sia and Raphael shared a quiet moment of connection, their laughter blending with the soft hum of the city. But just as she began to settle into the comfort of the night, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She hesitated, glancing down. Leo's name flashed across the screen. Her heart tightened, a flood of emotions rushing in, guilt, confusion, the pull to pick up. But her gaze shifted to Raphael, who was looking at her, his presence warm and steady beside her. She wasn't ready to let this moment slip away. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Leo wasn't stopping. Raphael noticed the subtle shift in her demeanor, the slight tension in her shoulders as she glanced at the screen. Everything okay? He asked, his voice gentle, his eyes attentive. Sia let out a slow breath, meeting his gaze. It's just nobody important, she murmured, her voice trailing off. I'm sorry, just someone trying to get in touch. Raphael nodded, sensing there was more to the story but not pressing. He didn't want to break the ease between them, not now. It's all right, he said quietly, offering her the space she needed. Sia's gaze dropped to her phone again, her thumb hovering over the screen, fingers trembling slightly. She felt the pull, Leo's desperation, his expectations, the past refusing to let go. But tonight wasn't about that. Tonight was about her. I don't know if I can keep doing this, she admitted almost to herself. I don't want to keep getting pulled back into it. Not tonight. Raphael's silence offered her the calm she needed to process it. She turned away from him for a moment, eyes scanning the night around them as the phone buzzed once more, then fell silent. She took a deep breath, and the weight of the decision settled in. Finally, she turned the phone face down on the table. Meanwhile, Leo's phone call ended without a response. He stared at the screen, his chest tightening as the message, "Call declined," flashed across it. He sat there still, his heart sinking as a wave of rejection washed over him. He'd been so sure. Why hadn't she answered? The question echoed in his mind, and all he could do was wonder. Was she on a date with Raphael? Chapter 7. Leo couldn't sleep that night, twisting and turning, the weight of his thoughts pressing heavily on him. His mind raced, his pulse quickened with each passing hour. He had made his bed, and now he had to lay in it. All night. The question lingered in his mind. Was she with Raphael? By the first break of dawn, before the chickens had even started their morning chorus, or the sun had fully stretched its arms into the sky, Leo was already standing outside Sia's apartment. He stood there in the quiet, his breath visible in the cold morning air, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. He had to see her, had to confront her. He couldn't wait any longer. Sia's door opened with an almost reluctant creak, and there she stood in the doorway, her face tired but resolute, eyes narrowing as she took in Leo's presence. "What are you doing here, Leo?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with irritation. Leo stepped forward, his frustration clearly visible on his face. "I need to talk to you," he said, his tone raw, laced with the urgency of the situation. "I've been calling you, trying to reach you, and you just shut me out. Why?" Sia took a deep breath, steadying herself as she crossed her arms. "I don't owe you an explanation anymore, Leo." Leo's eyes widened, a mix of frustration and disbelief washing over him. "What do you mean you don't owe me an explanation?" His voice was tight with emotion. "We were together for years, and you're just going to let it go like this?" Sia's gaze remained unwavering. "You made your choices, Leo, and I made mine. That's all there is to it." The words hung heavy between them, but Leo wasn't finished. His mind was racing. "Wait, were you on a date yesterday?" His voice lowered, trying to piece things together. Sia froze for a moment, her heart skipping, her expression betraying her for just a brief second. She quickly masked it, but the silence lingered. "What?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Leo's eyes narrowed, seeing through her hesitation. "So you were," he said, his tone cutting. "And it was with Raphael, wasn't it?" Sia was stunned again. She looked at him, incredulous. "Are you now stalking me, Leo?" Leo's expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered, his voice laced with frustration. "No, I'm not stalking you. I'm just trying to make sense of this. You can't be serious about moving on with him, can you?" Sia's chest tightened with anger, her body stiffening as she tried to keep calm. "You don't get it, do you?" she asked, her voice low but firm. "You've always tried to control me, Leo. Every time I start to move forward, you pull me back in with your guilt and your manipulation. You've done it for years, and I'm done with it." Leo's face hardened, his expression defensive. "Manipulation? I'm just trying to get through to you, Sia. We have something real, something that's been there for a long time. You can't just throw it all away. You can't just walk away from me." Sia shook her head, the frustration bubbling over. "That's exactly the problem, Leo. You've never understood what I need, what I want. It's always been about what you want, what you think is best for me. But I've been stuck in that cycle long enough, and I refuse to be controlled by you anymore." Leo's brow furrowed, his frustration mounting. "Sia, I've been thinking about you. Every single day. I know I made mistakes, but I can fix them. We can fix this. Just give me another chance." Sia felt her heart ache for a moment, but she stood her ground. "You don't get it," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "It's not about fixing things, Leo. It's about me finding myself again. And I can't do that if I keep letting you manipulate me, keep letting you control the narrative of my life." Leo took a step closer, his face filled with desperation. "Please, Sia. I love you. I need you. We can make it work, I promise." Sia's tears welled up, but she refused to let them fall. She took a deep breath, composure settling over her like a shield. "It's too late for that," she said quietly but firmly, wiping away the stray tear. "You had your chance and you wasted it. You don't get to control me anymore, Leo. Not now, not ever." Leo's face contorted with pain, his eyes searching hers for any sign that she might change her mind. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he tried to hold her hands. "I love you, Sia. Please don't walk away from me. Don't walk away from us." Sia's heart twisted, but she stood tall, looking him dead in the eyes. "It's too late for that," she repeated, her voice steady. "I can't go back to that. Not now, not ever." Tears ran down Sia's face, but she didn't let them break her resolve. She had made up her mind, and there was no turning back. Leo stepped back, a broken expression on his face as he watched her. He had lost her, and this time, there was no coming back from it. Raphael stood at the door of Sia's apartment. His steps had been light, the excitement of seeing her pulling him forward, but when the door swung open, his smile faltered. Standing in the living room, face tight with frustration, was none other than Leo. Raphael's mind raced as he stood frozen at the doorway. What the hell is he doing here? Sia, still in her robe, glanced at Raphael, her expression filled with a mix of surprise and discomfort. She opened her mouth to say something, but Raphael beat her to it. "Is this the man, the ex you were talking about?" His tone was guarded, though his eyes betrayed the hint of tension he was feeling. Sia nodded slowly, her gaze flickering to Leo before she opened her mouth to add something. "Yes, Leo." But before she could finish, Leo stepped forward, his voice cutting through the air. "What are you doing here, Raphael?" Leo's tone was sharp, his posture defensive. Raphael took a deep breath, pushing aside the rising tension. His hands tightened around the bouquet of flowers he'd brought for Sia, the gesture now feeling increasingly out of place. "It's none of your business, Leo," he said coldly, stepping further into the room. "Haven't you done enough?" The words hung in the air like daggers. Both men locked in a silent standoff, their eyes never wavering. Sia stepped between them, holding her hands up, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Please, both of you, can we just—" But neither Raphael nor Leo paid her any mind. The tension between them was palpable, each word exchanged like a spark. Leo's jaw tightened. "You think you can just waltz in and take over? You think you're good enough for her?" His voice was low but filled with venom, as though every word was meant to cut deeper. Sia's face flushed with frustration. "Leo, stop it. This isn't—" "No," Leo interrupted, his voice now louder. "I've got every right to know why you're letting him be here." Raphael, already on edge, took a step toward Leo, his eyes hardening. "You don't have any rights anymore," he said with quiet fury. "You had your chance and you blew it. It's over." Sia's heart was pounding as the tension between the two men escalated. She stepped forward, pleading with them both. "Please, can you just stop? This isn't helping anyone." But Leo wasn't finished. "You think you're so much better than me, huh? That's what this is about? You think she's just going to forget about me for some guy who shows up like he owns the place?" Sia flinched, the raw emotion in his voice hitting her hard. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, Leo's words continued to spiral. "Just leave, Leo," Sia said through gritted teeth, her patience running thin. "I've told you I'm done. This is over." But Leo stood his ground, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "I'm not going anywhere." His eyes locked onto Raphael with a look of challenge. "And if you think I'm letting this go just because you're here, you're wrong." Raphael's hands clenched into fists, but before he could say another word, he turned to Sia. His expression softened, though the frustration still lingered in his eyes. "If he doesn't want to leave, I will," he said quietly, his voice more composed than he felt. He dropped the flowers onto the floor in front of him, the petals scattering like his patience had just shattered. He glanced at Sia. He turned and walked out the door, leaving the tension to hang thick in the room behind him. Sia stood there, the weight of the moment crashing down on her. She wanted to cry, to scream, but she didn't. She had to stand firm. But all she could do was watch Raphael leave, her heart heavy with the weight of it all. Leo stood in the hallway, his fists clenched, the door still open behind him as he stared at the floor. His chest was tight with a mix of anger, confusion, and something more, something raw and vulnerable that he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. The silence in the apartment felt suffocating after Raphael had left, and now, the words that had been building up in his chest came rushing out. Sia, standing by the door with her arms crossed, her face still pale from the confrontation, didn't say anything. Her eyes, though soft, were firm, a quiet strength emanating from her. "I can't let you go," Leo finally spoke, his voice thick with desperation. "Not like this, Sia. Not for him. Please." Sia didn't react right away, but she could feel the weight of his words. They hung in the air, trying to pull her back into a space she had worked so hard to leave. "Leo, you need to understand," she said quietly, her voice calm but unwavering. Whatever this was between us, it's over. It's not something I'm coming back to." Leo's eyes flashed with frustration. He stepped forward, desperate for her to understand, for her to see past the walls she'd built between them. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't see it? But you're wrong. You're wrong if you think I'm just going to stand by while you throw everything away for him. After everything we've been through, you think you can just walk away?" His voice broke as the words spilled out. Sia's expression softened slightly, but she didn't flinch. "Leo, I don't want this. I don't want you dragging me back into the same cycle. I can't keep going around in circles with you." His face twisted in frustration, his hands shaking with emotion. "Then make me a promise, Sia," he said, his voice lowering, his tone more pleading now. "Promise me you won't see him again. Promise me, and I'll leave you alone. I'll step back. I'll give you space. But only if you promise you'll cut him out of your life. Us. We're what's real. Not him. Not someone who just walked in and took advantage of your confusion. You know I'm the one who understands you." The request hit Sia like a slap, her heart sinking. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You can't ask me that, Leo. I won't promise you that," she said firmly, her voice tinged with the weight of the decision she had already made. "You're asking me to cut him out of my life because you can't handle it. That's not something I'm going to do." Leo stepped back, his face falling with disbelief. "I'm asking you to choose me, Sia. After everything, you're really just going to let him in?" His voice broke on the last word, and for the first time, the walls he'd built around his emotions cracked open. He was raw, vulnerable, his pride completely shattered. "I don't know how to do this without you. I don't know how to let you go." Sia's chest tightened, her heart aching for the man in front of her. She had loved him once, but this was different now. She had already made her choice, and it was time to make him understand. "Leo," she said softly, her voice calm, "you need to let me go. I can't keep living in this back and forth with you. It's not healthy for either of us. I've made up my mind. I'm moving forward and I won't go back. I need you to respect that. Please." The silence that followed was deafening. Leo stared at her, his eyes wide with the weight of the rejection, the realization hitting him like a punch to the gut. He had been so sure that she'd come back, that they could fix this. But the truth was staring him in the face, and he didn't want to accept it. "I can't lose you, Sia," Leo muttered, his voice broken. "I can't let you go." But Sia, firm and resolute, shook her head, her heart heavy but steady. "You have to, Leo. You have to let me go." Leo's shoulders slumped as the weight of her words finally sunk in. He stood there, defeated, his hands clenched into fists by his sides. For the first time in a long time, he felt completely powerless. I don't know how to fix this," he whispered, his voice soft with the agony of losing her. "I've been thinking about you every day, every moment. And I'm sorry. I've been a fool. But it's too late, isn't it?" Sia didn't say anything for a moment, the emotion of the situation wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. But as she met his gaze, her voice was calm, unwavering. "It's too late for that. It's too late to fix what's been broken." Leo nodded slowly, as if he were acknowledging a truth he had been refusing to see. The tears in his eyes were almost impossible for him to hide, but he fought them back. This wasn't how he had imagined it ending. "I'll leave," Leo finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. He took one last look at Sia, as though trying to memorize her face before turning away, his steps heavy and uncertain. Sia stood there, her heart aching, but there was a sense of relief in the finality of it all. She had made the right decision. She just wished Leo could have understood sooner. But she knew as long as she had one in her life, the other was bound to be there. Chapter 8. Raphael spotted Leo standing near the spot where they had first met. Something in the air shifted. Leo, arms crossed, his eyes burning with intensity, stood waiting. The tension between them was immediate, thick and suffocating. Raphael didn't hesitate as he approached, his posture defensive, a deep unease settling in. "What the hell are you doing here, Leo?" he growled, already feeling the simmering hostility between them. Leo sneered, his eyes narrowing in disdain. "Just making sure you're not playing any games, Raphael. I don't think you realize what you're walking into. Sia doesn't need you in her life." Raphael's jaw tightened, his anger flaring up. "You think you can just keep controlling her? You think she needs your messed up idea of protection? She's not yours anymore, Leo." Leo took a step closer, his voice low and dangerous. "And you think you're the right choice? You don't belong here, Raphael. You don't even know what she's been through. You think some flowers and a few sweet words are going to fix everything. You're just a distraction." Raphael's fists clenched. "You've had your chance to be there for her, Leo. Don't pretend like you're suddenly the knight in shining armor. You're nothing but a damn mess." That was all it took. Leo's eyes flared with rage, and before Raphael could even react, Leo lunged at him, swinging a brutal punch that landed squarely on Raphael's jaw. Raphael staggered back, momentarily dazed, but quickly recovered, firing back with a wild punch aimed at Leo's stomach. Leo blocked it, his fist swinging again, this time hitting Raphael in the side with a sharp crack. "You think you're tough, huh?" Leo growled as he continued to land hit after hit, each one harder than the last. He threw another punch, catching Raphael square in the face. Raphael stumbled back, blood trickling from his lip. "I'm done playing nice, Raphael," Leo yelled, his face twisted with fury. "She belongs with me. You're nothing but a damn joke." Raphael wiped the blood from his mouth, anger coursing through him. "I'm not going anywhere. You don't control her anymore, Leo. She's her own person." The two men exchanged blow after blow, their fight escalating quickly, with Leo taking the upper hand. He landed another brutal punch to Raphael's face, sending him crashing into the nearby wall. Raphael grunted, his vision blurring for a moment, but he refused to back down. He swung again, but Leo was already on top of him, delivering another punishing blow to Raphael's nose. Blood poured from the wound, but Raphael clenched his teeth, trying to fight through the pain. "You're nothing but a fool," Leo spat, grabbing Raphael by the collar and slamming him against the wall. "She'll never choose you. I'll make sure of it," Raphael growled, shoving Leo off of him, his rage pushing him to keep fighting. But it was clear, Leo was in control. "Get off of him!" Julian's voice cut through the chaos, and the sound of approaching security guards filled the air. Within moments, Leo was pulled away by two of the hotel security guards, his chest heaving with the effort, his anger still boiling. Raphael stood, bloodied and bruised, his body sore from the barrage of blows, but his eyes locked onto Leo's, fury still burning in his chest. "I'm not done with you," he growled, his voice barely more than a whisper. Leo, struggling against the guards, shot him a venomous glare. "You'll never be done with me. She's mine, Raphael. You'll see." Security guards held Leo back, dragging him away from the scene as Julian stepped in between the two men, his face a mixture of frustration and concern. "Enough!" Julian snapped, his hand on Raphael's shoulder, trying to steady him. "This is getting out of hand. We can't keep doing this." Raphael, panting and bloodied, didn't say a word, but his eyes never left Leo, who was still struggling, seething with rage. She had been trying to reach Raphael for the last few minutes, but it had been quiet on the other end. Her heart raced as she called him again. This time, Julian picked up, his voice calm but tinged with something she couldn't quite place. "Julian?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "Where's Raphael? What's going on?" On the other end of the line, she could hear Raphael's voice faintly in the background, shouting at someone. Leo, she guessed. His words were muffled but unmistakable. "Leo, you messed up. She doesn't need you anymore." Sia stood by her phone, pacing nervously. She had been trying to reach Raphael for the last few minutes, but it had been quiet on the other end. Her heart raced as she called him again. This time, Julian picked up, his voice calm but tinged with something she couldn't quite place. "Julian?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "Where's Raphael? What's going on?" On the other end of the line, she could hear Raphael's voice faintly in the background, shouting at someone. "Leo," she guessed. His words were muffled but unmistakable. "Leo, you messed up. She doesn't need you anymore." Sia froze, her breath catching in her throat. "What the hell is happening?" she demanded, her voice rising with panic. Julian's tone was quick and composed, but there was an underlying tension. Nothing, Sia. Everything is under control. Raphael's fine. Sia's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't trust it. She knew something was wrong. Is Leo there? She asked, the question slipping out before she could stop herself. There was a brief pause, and she could hear the faint sounds of Raphael yelling in the background again. Then Julian's voice, softer this time. No, Sia, don't. But before Julian could finish, Sia's finger had already hit the end call button. The sound of the phone disconnecting echoed in her ears as she stood frozen in place. Her thoughts raced. She had to get to him. She had to see what was going on. The uncertainty in her chest grew, but she knew she couldn't wait any longer. Without another moment's hesitation, Sia grabbed her coat, her mind focused on one thing, getting to Raphael. What she had just heard on the phone, the rising tension, the anger in Raphael's voice, told her everything she needed to know. Leo had crossed a line, and this fight was far from over. Sia rushed into the hotel lobby, her heart pounding in her chest as she scanned the area. The tension from earlier still lingered in the pit of her stomach, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to find Raphael, needed to understand what the hell had just happened. The fight. Leo. The explosion of anger between the two men that felt like it had spiraled out of control in a moment's notice. She found him in the hallway, leaning against the wall near the elevator, his face bruised, blood still staining his shirt. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, his body tense, and his jaw clenched. He didn't even look at her when she approached. His gaze focused on something far away, his mind clearly elsewhere. Raphael, Sia called softly, her voice strained. What happened? Why were you fighting with Leo? Raphael didn't respond at first. He stood there, still as stone, the anger and pain radiating off of him like a force field. His breathing was heavy, labored from the fight, and it was obvious that he was struggling to control the storm of emotions inside him. Sia stepped closer, her heart sinking at the sight of him. His swollen eye, the blood trickling from his lip, the tension in his shoulders. It all told a story she didn't quite understand. This wasn't just about a rivalry anymore. This was personal. Raphael, please, Sia said, her voice softer now but still pleading. What happened? I need to know. He didn't speak for a long moment, his eyes flickering to hers, the silence stretching between them like an uncomfortable gap. Then, slowly, he let out a breath, his voice gruff, rough. He's just... Leo. His words were fragmented, pieces of a puzzle he wasn't sure how to fit together. Sia shook her head, frustration mixing with confusion. I don't understand, she admitted, her voice a little shaken. Why is he so angry? What's really going on between you two? Raphael shifted slightly, his fists tightening. It's complicated, he muttered, his voice colder now, almost as if he were trying to push her away. It's not something you need to get involved in. But I do, Sia said, her voice rising. I need to know, Raphael. This mess, this fight, it's tearing everything apart. It's tearing me apart. Raphael's gaze flickered with something other than anger, pain, maybe regret, but it was gone as quickly as it came. It's not about you, he said, his voice hollow. It's about him and me. He threw a glance in her direction, but there was no softness in it, only a simmering frustration. You don't get it, Sia. Leo and I, we've been at each other's throats for years. Sia's confusion deepened. But why? What started it? What happened between you two? She asked, desperate for clarity. She needed to understand. She had to. It started back in high school. We were always competing. Who could be the best? At first, it was just teenage rivalry, just a game. But Leo took it too far. He started spreading rumors, talking behind my back, trying to tear me down in front of everyone. And when I finally stood up for myself, when I had enough, that's when it got ugly. Sia absorbed his words, trying to piece together what she was hearing. So it was always about this? Or was it something more? Raphael didn't answer right away, his gaze shifting to the floor. I don't want you to think this has anything to do with you, Sia. This is between Leo and me. Sia took a deep breath, but her chest felt tight. She didn't know what to say, how to fix this, or if there even was a way to fix it. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing on her. The fight between Leo and Raphael wasn't just a petty rivalry anymore. It was personal, deeply rooted in unresolved anger and competition. And it seemed like Sia was standing right in the middle of it all. You think it's over, don't you? Raphael's voice cut through her thoughts, pulling her back to reality. Sia looked up at him, her face filled with both confusion and concern. What do you mean? I mean this fight, Raphael said, his voice rough. It's not over. It's never been over. Leo's not just going to let this go, Sia. And neither will I. Sia's heart sank as she realized the full weight of the situation. This wasn't going to stop. It wasn't just a one-time thing. You're right, she said quietly, her voice tinged with worry. This isn't over. And if you don't stop this, it'll keep getting worse. And it'll hurt both of you. And me too. Raphael's eyes softened for a brief moment, but the anger was still there, simmering under the surface. I didn't ask for this, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Sia stepped closer, her voice pleading. Raphael, please, just talk to me. But as he met her gaze, the distance between them seemed to grow. There was nothing she could say to make him stop. Nothing she could do to end the tension between him and Leo. As Raphael took a step back, his face hardening again, Sia felt the weight of what was about to come. If this rivalry continued, if neither of them backed down, she would be caught in the middle. And the damage could get worse, not just for Raphael, but for her, too. Just know, Raphael said, his voice quiet, but full of unspoken resolve, this isn't over. And it might never be. Chapter 9. Sia's heart raced as she approached Leo's apartment. The emotional whirlwind from the past few days had left her feeling exhausted, but she knew she couldn't run from it any longer. Raphael and Leo's constant bickering had taken its toll on her, and today, she was determined to confront Leo and make him understand that it had to stop. She knocked on the door, her fists clenched at her sides. Moments later, Leo opened the door, his face instantly hardening when he saw her. His usual arrogance was there, but there was something else in his eyes. Something softer, more vulnerable. What do you want, Sia? He asked, his voice guarded. Sia stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her frustration boiling over. Why did you fight Raphael? She demanded, her voice sharp with anger. Why are you making everything so much worse? Leo's eyes flickered with something close to guilt, but he quickly masked it with a defensive smirk. You think it's my fault? He's the one who's been trying to take everything from me, Sia. You think I'm just going to sit back and let him walk all over me? I won't. Sia threw her hands up in exasperation, her voice rising. It's not about you anymore, Leo. It's about me. Why can't you see that? I can't keep being dragged into your fight. You two are tearing me apart. Leo stepped toward her, his tone softening, but his words were no less forceful. I didn't want it to be like this, Sia. I never wanted to hurt you. But I love you, and I won't let him take you away from me. Sia felt her heart twist at his words. She had loved him once, but that love had been buried under layers of pain and betrayal. Leo, she said quietly, her voice tinged with sorrow, I still care for you. But I can't afford to take that chance again. I can't go through this cycle of hurt anymore. Leo's eyes darkened, and his jaw clenched. You're choosing him then? He asked, his voice strained. No! Sia cried, her frustration growing. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm choosing myself, Leo. I can't keep living in the middle of your rivalry, trying to fix everything for both of you. I'm not responsible for your fight, and I won't be the one to pick a side. I need to let go of all of this, you included. Leo's expression twisted with disbelief. You can't just walk away from this. From me. From us. He reached for her, but Sia stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. I have to, Leo, she said firmly, her voice breaking slightly. I've tried to hold on to something that's not there anymore. You've hurt me more times than I can count, and I can't keep going back to the same cycle of heartache. It's over. Leo stood frozen, his face a mask of shock and pain. So that's it then? He asked, his voice small. You're just giving up on us? Sia shook her head, tears threatening to spill, but she held them back. I'm not giving up on us, Leo. I'm giving up on the chaos, the fighting, the lies. I can't keep doing this. For a long moment, Leo didn't speak. He stood there, staring at her, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Finally, his shoulders slumped, and he exhaled slowly. I don't know how to let you go, Sia. You have to. she whispered, turning to leave. I need to let go of you. I need to heal. And you need to do the same. As she reached the door, Leo's voice stopped her, this time soft, almost pleading. He took a deep breath, his words faltering. I loved you more than I ever knew how to show. I still do, Sia. But I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm asking you to believe that we can find our way back. Even after all this, if you'll just give me one last chance. Sia froze at the door, her fingers hovering over the handle, her breath caught in her throat. His words hit her like a tidal wave, and for a moment, the weight of everything between them seemed to disappear. She turned slightly, her heart aching as she fought the urge to turn around, to go back to him. She could feel the pull, the love that had once been so deep and real, but there was something else, a realization that the cycle had to end. I can't, Leo, she whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I can't keep doing this. For both of us. I need to let go. With a final, lingering look, she stepped out the door, leaving the weight of her decision heavy in her chest. As the door clicked shut behind her, she didn't look back. She had made her choice. And though a small part of her wondered if she had made the right choice, she knew in her heart that this was the only way to finally free herself from the chaos that had consumed her life. What she didn't know was that Leo stood behind that door, his heart breaking as the finality of her words settled in. Would she ever come back to him? Or had he already lost her forever? Sia stood in the park, her hands clenched at her sides, heart racing. She had called both Raphael and Leo here, hoping that this would be the moment where she could finally make them understand. She couldn't keep being the one in the middle, torn between them. She needed it to stop. The constant back and forth, the rivalry, was draining her. Raphael was the first to arrive, his expression tight, eyes scanning the surroundings before locking onto Sia. He didn't spare a glance for Leo, who arrived moments later, his arms crossed and a scowl on his face. Both men exuded a simmering tension, and Sia could feel it, the heaviness of their unresolved conflict weighing down on everything. What's this about, Sia? Raphael asked, his voice sharp. You called me here, but you should know that I'm not about to back down from Leo. Not after everything. Leo scoffed, glaring at Raphael. You're the one who doesn't belong here, Raphael. You don't need to be part of this. This is between me and Sia, not you. Sia took a deep breath, pushing past the tension and focusing on her goal. No, Leo. This is about me. I'm asking you both to stop. This fight. It's tearing me apart, and I can't keep being stuck in the middle of it. Raphael turned to Leo, frustration boiling over. You're the one making everything worse, Leo. You've been playing games, trying to tear things apart. I'm not just going to sit back and let you run the show. Leo's voice grew sharper, and he stepped closer to Raphael. And you think you can come here and fix things? You think you can just push me aside because you want to be the hero? This isn't about you, Raphael. It's about me and Sia. You're just in the way. Sia stepped forward, raising her hands to calm them both. Please stop, she said, her voice trembling. This isn't about who's right or wrong anymore. It's about me finding peace. I don't want to be caught in the middle of this. I'm asking you both to stop. Raphael ignored Sia, his eyes locked onto Leo. You've pushed me for too long, Leo. You can't keep doing this, trying to pull us into this endless game of control. She's not a prize to fight over. Leo looked at Raphael, the anger in his eyes simmering. You think I'm the one playing a game? You've been chasing after her like she's some kind of trophy. I'm not backing down. This is my chance. Sia's heart sank as the words flew back and forth, and she felt more and more trapped between them. She had tried to stop this, to bring a resolution, but all she had managed to do was bring their egos to the surface. I can't choose between you two, Sia said, her voice quiet but filled with conviction. I don't want to pick a side. I just want this to stop. I want peace. Raphael stepped toward her, his voice low and urgent. But you have to choose, Sia. You can't just walk away from us both. If you want to be with me, you have to say it. If you want to be with him, you have to say it. I need to know. Sia's breath caught in her throat. She had been hoping they could understand her need for space, for peace, but Raphael's words hit her hard. She felt the pressure of the moment building, the weight of their rivalry becoming too much to bear. Raphael, she started, but the words faltered. She couldn't choose between them. She didn't want to choose at all. She wanted to walk away from it. But now, with both of them demanding an answer, the stakes had never felt higher. Leo's voice was biting as he added, "You're asking her to choose, Raphael? You've got a lot of nerve. She can't just pick you over me." Sia felt her chest tighten, the overwhelming sense of being torn in two. She couldn't do it. She couldn't choose between them. "I'm not choosing," she said, her voice steady now but filled with sorrow. "I'm done. I can't keep living in this rivalry, in this chaos. I need to walk away." Both men looked at her, their faces a mix of disbelief and frustration. Raphael's jaw clenched, but his voice softened as he looked at her one last time. "Don't do this, Sia," he said quietly, the desperation in his voice cutting through the tension. "You don't have to walk away. You just have to choose. Choose me." Sia looked at both of them, the weight of her decision heavier than ever. But she couldn't stay in this cycle. Not for them. Not for anyone. With a final, heart-wrenching glance, she turned and walked away, leaving them both behind. Chapter 10. Sia sat in the quiet of her room, the weight of her decision crushing her chest with each breath. She had spent so many sleepless nights caught between two worlds, Raphael and Leo. But as she sat there, staring at the empty space around her, she realized something important. This was no longer about love. She had listened to both men. She had heard their apologies, their pleas, their anger. But nothing seemed to fill the hole in her chest. Nothing seemed to silence the chaos swirling around her. Her heart was in turmoil, each thought feeling heavier than the last. Sia had tried so hard to fix everything for them. But now, sitting in the silence, she couldn't deny the truth any longer. She wasn't fixing anything. She was losing herself in the process. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible but clear in her mind. She felt like she was drowning in their rivalry, their pride, and her own fear of making the wrong choice. Every decision seemed to drag her further into their mess, and the fear of making the wrong decision paralyzed her. But there was no way to keep going like this. Not anymore. Her thoughts were interrupted by a buzzing phone, and she glanced down at it. It was Emma, her closest friend. "Hello." Sia answered, her voice shaky. "Sia, hey." Emma greeted warmly. "How are you doing? You sound exhausted." Sia leaned back against the wall, exhaling deeply. "I don't know how I'm doing, Em. I feel trapped. Between Raphael and Leo, and their constant fights. I feel like I'm suffocating." Emma's tone softened, sensing the heaviness in her voice. "You don't have to keep carrying this for them, you know? You're not their emotional punching bag." Sia closed her eyes, the tears threatening to fall. "I know, but I can't help it. I care for them both, and I don't want to make the wrong choice. But I can't keep living in this chaos." "You don't need to fix everything, Sia," Emma said gently. "You need to fix you. Forget about them for a moment. What do you need? What do you want?" Sia paused, her heart pounding in her chest. The question seemed so simple, but she couldn't answer it right away. She had been so focused on them, on making their rivalry stop, that she hadn't stopped to think about herself. "I need peace," Sia said finally, the words feeling like a release. "I need to stop being dragged into this fight, this cycle. I don't want to choose between them. I just want to be free." Emma's voice was soft and reassuring. "Then it's time to let go. You don't owe them anything. You need to heal, Sia. You need to focus on your own future." Sia sat on the edge of her bed, feeling more at peace than she had in a long time. She still cared for both Raphael and Leo in different ways, but she knew that wasn't enough. She had been trying, but in doing so, she had forgotten about herself. As she stared at the letters she had written to both men, her heart filled with sadness. She could still feel the pull of their love, their demands, their rivalry, but it was no longer enough to keep her in their storm. "I can't stay in this," she whispered to herself. "I can't keep living in the middle of their battle." She picked up the letters again, reading through the words she had written, explaining that she needed to heal and that she couldn't carry their emotional baggage anymore. She needed to step away. As she sealed the envelopes, a small part of her felt an odd sense of peace. It wasn't the peace of resolution, but the peace of knowing that she was choosing herself. The act of writing the letters felt cathartic. It was the final step in her emotional process, saying goodbye to both men, to what they shared, to the pain that had clung to her for so long. It hurt, but it also gave her a sense of closure. She had carried the weight of their rivalry for too long, and it was time to let go. To Raphael, she wrote, I care for you, but I can't keep fighting battles that aren't mine. I need to heal. I need to be on my own. To Leo, she wrote, You hurt me more than I ever thought possible, but I loved you. I can't do this anymore. I need to move forward. As she sealed the envelopes, Sia felt the weight of her decision. It was painful, but it was also the beginning of something new. A chance to heal. A chance to find herself again. The next morning, Sia packed her things quietly, her heart heavy with the weight of everything she was leaving behind. She didn't want to cause any more drama or stir the pot with Raphael or Leo. She couldn't handle being caught in their rivalry anymore. She was leaving the emotional chaos behind, seeking peace on her own. Sia grabbed her bag and slipped out of her apartment, leaving behind the past and stepping into a future unknown. Sia stepped into her car, her hands gripping the wheel, the road ahead of her stretching out like a blank canvas. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to leave. But as the road stretched out before her, one question lingered in her mind. Would she ever truly be free from them? Would this be the end of Sia, Leo and Raphael? Or would they meet in the distant or nearest future? And if you were in Sia's shoes, what would you do differently? Who would you pick? Share, subscribe and comment on your thoughts to show the author some love and appreciation.